The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the second of a four-part webinar series on tools for a better well-being. We want to remind you that this is being recorded. All participants are muted, but we encourage you to use the chat function for any questions that you may have. You can get to the chat function by putting your cursor over the orange arrow in the upper right-hand screen. If you do that, a drop-down menu will appear and you will see a place for comments on the bottom. You can enter any comments or questions you have there in the chat screen. So again, I want to say welcome. Leah Holzwarth is with us today. She is from Wespath Benefits and Investments. She's the manager of health and well-being. And my name is Leigh Goodrich. I am with the General Commission on the Status and Role of Women, and I'm the Director of Education and Leadership. And together we are going to be working with you to bring you through an agenda that includes the following items. What is screen time? What's it about? We want to decrease it and take back our lives, but what does it really consist of? Does screen time impact your well-being? Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? What are some ways that you might decrease your screen time if you feel that you spend too much time in front of screens? And are there any helpful resources that you can use in order to help you decrease your screen time? So we're going to start by asking those of you who are tuning in today where you're located. So just go to the chat screen. And remember, I told you press that orange arrow and then let the chat screen appear on the bottom right and tell us exactly where you're located. Okay, so we have some people from Illinois and from Lake Michigan on the Illinois side, and Albany, Georgia, and Illinois. A lot of people from Illinois. Anyone else? Any others? Well, if you're out there and you just don't want to share your location, that's just fine. I know we had about 35 people who were signed up to participate in this, so I know you're out there. The next thing we'd like to do is tell us what your role is in your local church. And again, you're going to use the chat screen in order to tell us. Are you an office manager, a member of a congregation? Maybe you serve on an SPRC, a Staff Parish Relations Committee. Are you a parish nurse or a wellness minister? Are you a pastor? Let's see, we have some people who are struggling to find their chat box. So in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, there is an arrow in an orange box. And if you put your cursor on that and press, there should be a menu item that comes down with a chat box at the very bottom. You have questions with arrow. So if you see where it says questions, that arrow will open it up for you. So click on that box with the arrow, the orange box with the arrow. You'll see a box that says questions. and then you hit that arrow. And the menu should drop down. Any more luck with that?
Looks like it. We're getting some good feedback up here.
Great, good. We've got it.
Okay.
I think that's it. Let's see. Okay, good. So we have a church secretary and agency staff, and a pastor, and a candidate for being a pastor. Currently a Sunday school superintendent, and another senior pastor. Agency helper. Wonderful, so we've got quite a few and quite a varied number of people participating.
All right, thanks everybody. This is Leah, and I'm going to kick off the first part of our webinar series, and then Leigh will go ahead and finish up with us. Again, thank you very much for being with us today. We're just going to talk a little bit about screen time, and while screen time might seem like a simple thing, sometimes it's the little consequences, just part of a daily life. But what are the consequences of spending a lot of time with our screens? How might it affect our health and our relationships and our emotional health and our day-to-day life? And most of us just take being on a screen as just part of our daily life, but how does it impact it, and what are the consequences behind it? Because devices have become just much more integrated into our lives, and they have both those positive and negative influences. Before we get started on all of the details that Leigh and I will be going through, I just wanted to run through the disclaimer that the information in this webinar is provided by Wespath Benefits and Investments Center for Health and the General Commission on the Status and Role of Women as in Educational Services. It's just general information and should not be construed as, or does not constitute and should not be relied on as medical advice or other professional advice or services in any specific manner. So now that we have the legal side of everything taken care of, we'll go ahead and kick off the rest of the webinar. So I think the big question comes up is, what is screen time? And screen time is any time spent in front of a computer, a TV, a video game, a smartphone, a tablet, or a movie screen. Sounds pretty simple. But as we move forward, we're going to start to explore exactly how much time are we spending on those, and how many devices do we have, and how much time do we spend on those devices. And if you think back into the 1960s and 70s, computers were large machines that took up whole floors in large buildings, and they were rather mysterious. Then in the 80s, that home computer came in, and it really started gaining popularity. More people had them in their homes. There was school curriculum designed around programming, and they were just becoming more mainstream. And as they became more popular at home, they were also more popular at work. But what we really used them for, it was more like word processing, spreadsheets, and presentations. And then those computers were networked. And then we had email and the World Wide Web. So now our smartphones have more computing power than those home computers back in the 80s, which when you think about it is kind of crazy. I remember having my first computer, and it took up kind of that whole table, and there was the big printer, and there was the big deep monitor and everything else. And now I can do everything that I want to on my phone. So now we have these devices that just really truly sit in the palms of our hands. Laptops have replaced desktops. Tablets have replaced laptops. And even phones have replaced, or tablets have been being somewhat replaced by phones, or phones and tablets are very similar in size now too. And then there's the e-readers. Books are on demand. Used to be that you always had to go and find a book, whether it was at the bookstore or you ordered it from Amazon and had to wait, and now they just pop, and there they are in your e-reader, and you can have a book anytime you want to. And then the smartphones, which I think are probably smarter than we are. So we do spend, when we think about it, a lot more time looking at devices. So this is the first of 6 polls that we're going to ask you, and I want you to think about what types of devices do you have. So let's go ahead and give me a second, and I will launch this poll. And what you're going to do is you're going to see this pop up on your screen, and go ahead and click on all that apply. You have a smartphone, tablet, laptop, desktop, and your e-reader. And this is just for you. And the numbers are rolling in. Okay, we'll give you just a little bit longer, and it looks like I will go ahead and close this poll, and then I will share it with everybody so you can see the results. And it's looking like lots of smartphones out there, over 92%. Everybody seems to have a laptop. Desktops and tablets are not quite as popular. And then it looks like a quarter of us have e-readers. All right. I'm going to go ahead. Type that one. Now, oops. Okay. This is going to be the big question. How many devices do you actually have of these? So let's go ahead and I will find that poll for you and launch it. Okay. How many of these do you have? And include those at work. So you may actually have 2 laptops or 2 desktops.
Again, lots of numbers coming in.
All right, looks like we've got, oh. All right, 100% of you have voted, thank you, and here are our results. It's looking like most of us are somewhere between that 3 to 4. What? Oh, did I? Okay. Is it sure? There we go, sorry. There we go. Yes. Now we're seeing it. My crew here is helping us out. We're new at the poll thing. So, all right. So we're looking like most of us are in between that 3 to 7 range. So, perfect. Now is going to be the big question is how many devices do you have in your home? And this is going to include spouses, children, anybody that's living with you. All right, so we will like that. Here we go. All right, it looks like all of you have voted. So we'll close it and then we'll share those results with you. And it's looking like most of us are somewhere between that 5 and 12 range. Okay, so a lot of devices out there. We'll go ahead and hide that one. And so just a little bit, now that we know, kind of have gotten that check of how much time are we spending, oh, actually we'll be asking that question a little bit later, but how much, how many devices do we have and what do they all do? I want to just talk about that not all screen time is bad. that there have been so many good things that have happened because of this technology. It's changed how we work. It's changed immensely how we've evolved with how we communicate with each other. We have information at our fingertips. It's even changed our language. I mean, 20 years ago, did you ever think you would just say, oh, just Google it? I mean, and to know that that information is right there, or ask Siri if you're an Apple, a Mac user. It's also exposed us to new ideas, new thoughts, cultures, and it has the ability to access the world in amazing ways. You think about it. I know my nephew had a flat tire, and the response was on how to learn how to change his tire, it was just to YouTube it. And he did, and he figured it out, and all was good. So it changes, just how easy information is available. Or there's movies on demand, and you can watch movies on your smartphone, or you can watch the latest baseball game on your smartphone. Books are a download away. And also you think about the ways it's changed our communication. How much fun is it to Skype and FaceTime, or just send emails, or to Snapchat, or post on Facebook? There's all that social media and how we can reconnect with people that maybe we would never see again, or we would not have that communication with. So there's been a lot of different ways that it's really helped us to connect with one another. But then, like most things, there can be too much of a good thing. Spending time on our devices can hinder our physical well-being, our social well-being, our relationships, and also our mental well-being. So with that, we'll explore on some of those negative and side effects of too much screen time. There is research has shown a really strong impact physically by spending too much time in front of the screen. So there was a study done with adolescents between the ages of 12 and 19 and looked at the metabolic syndrome. And those adolescents reporting screen times of greater than 3 hours a day were approximately 2 to 3 times more likely to have metabolic syndrome. Now, metabolic syndrome is a cluster of conditions. It's increased blood pressure, high blood sugar, excess body fat around the waist, abnormal cholesterol, and triglyceride levels. And then occurring all together increases our risk of heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. So we find that those kids that are spending 3 hours or more a day in front of, whether it's video games, a computer, a laptop, or their phone, have an increased risk for metabolic syndrome than their peers that have daily screen times of less than an hour. Another interesting thing that I don't think a lot of us realize is that impact on our eyes. That eye strain is very much a concern from spending too much time in front of our devices. 2/3 of Americans experience digital eye strain and fatigue, which can reduce our productivity. And then there's screen time and sleep. And I think there's been a lot more attention to this as well, because they talk about the screens having that blue light that can make us feel like we're still awake, and that they can disrupt our natural sleep cycles by suppressing our melatonin, which is what helps us to go to sleep, by keeping our brain alert, so it really doesn't really want to shut off and rest. And then also, that too, when we're in front of our screens and we're looking at information, we keep thinking about that, and it really doesn't give us a chance to settle down and rest and to feel better about those things. And it just keeps us up longer, and our sleep quality isn't as good. So what does that also mean? It's chronic sleep deprivation has been tied to an increased risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, as well as depression. In a study by Mayo Clinic, they've compared adults who spent 2 hours of recreational screen time, so that's not related to work, to those who spent 4 hours. And those who spent more than 4 hours of recreational screen time had a 50% increase of deaths from general decreased health and almost 125% increased risk of events associated with cardiovascular disease, chest pain, or heart attack. So we know that if we're spending too much time in front of our screens, we're probably not spending that time being physically active, or on the flip side, getting the type of sleep that we may need to have. There's also strong links, especially among children, the research has been really focused on, is the impact that too much screen time can play in terms of how they are social and react to other people. And in this study, they found that when they looked at sixth graders, and they found that those sixth graders who spent 5 days without exposure to technology, they were better at reading human emotions than those who had regular access to devices. So this means that those children who spend significant time in front of their screens or their electronics cannot understand or compute emotions such as happiness, joy, anger, or uneasiness with their friends and family. And that really kind of makes us realize that they're not having that face-to-face contact that they may need to have those strong relationships. And then there's social media. Electronics have really brought social media, such as Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those, just to name a few of popular ones. But it also has brought out FOMO, or fear of missing out. And this just means that we spend more time in this world where people are only sharing the positive things in life or the positive things that are happening, and we think that that everybody's having fun, that everybody has this better life, and that you're behind with everybody and nobody has the problems that you have. And it really sets up unrealistic expectations. And it sets up too that, you know what, I'm not keeping up with the Joneses, and I need to keep up with the Joneses. And that may not all be, that's not necessarily the case, because people tend to only post those positive things and share those positive things. So it means also that we're spending more time with our devices and people that are away from us, or being socially interactive with people who aren't here with us on the day-to-day and actually talking with each other and living in that present moment. And then there's the risk factors. What was kind of an interesting study that we looked at, is cell phone distraction. And we hear so much about how we're not supposed to drive with our cell phones and we should not be driving distracted. But there's also, they're starting to track what happens to people when they are walking and on their cell phones. And we're finding more and more injuries that are out there, that they're, you see the kind of what we think is funny things on TV or on YouTube or wherever it may be, but somebody's looking at their cell phone and they crash into the stop sign or they walk out into the street. And while that may kind of be cute and funny at the time, these are realistically happening more and more. So it's really important to not only drive cell phone free, but also walk cell phone free. So with all of that in mind, we're going to run a couple more polls, and we're going to ask you the question, how much screen time do you have per day? So think about that while I get this next poll launched. All right, it should be up there, and go ahead and how many hours do you spend in front of a screen per day?
Remember to include your time at work and at home. Do you read from a tablet? Do you watch television in the evening? Do you play video games when you get home from work? How about during your commute? If you're on a train or a bus, are you reading on a tablet or looking things up on your cell phone? All of those items contribute to your screen time. And the responses are coming in. All right, we're looking pretty close. We're going to go ahead and close this poll out and share those results. So it looks as if most of us are spending between 3 and 11 hours, with the majority spending between 6 and 8 hours in front of a screen. So thinking about that, let's take a look at another poll. What do you think are the average number of screen hours that adults spend? So think about what you just responded to, and now let's look at what you think the average amount of time an adult spends in front of a screen. And again, this means time at work, time after work, entertainment time. How much screen time do you spend? Not you, other people, adults, generally. And again, we have numbers coming in. And it looks as though,
we'll give it just a few more seconds
before we close it out.
All right, here we go. We're going to go ahead and close it out, and I will share those results. All right, so we have some really good guesses, somewhere between 6 and 11 hours, and the answer is
10 hours a day. That's almost half the day, and about 2/3 of our waking hours. 10 hours a day. That's what the average adult spends in front of a screen. If adults are spending 10 hours each day in front of screens, how much time do our children spend in front of screens? What do you think? We have another poll. We're going to invite you to respond. Think about how much time your children or the children you know, nieces, nephews, friends, children, spend in front of screens. This includes television, games, gaming, certainly doing schoolwork. How much time do most children spend in front of a screen? Again, the numbers are coming in.
All right, so go ahead and close this. And launch it.
All right, and it looks as if 50% of us think that children spend between 5 and 7 hours on screen, but some think it could be between 3 and 4, and about 20% think it could be 8 to 10.
All right, so close that. And
the answer is 5 to 7 hours a day. That includes television time, like I said, or playing games on a parent's phone or iPad. 5 to 7 hours a day. Again, a pretty hefty amount of our waking hours. Now, perhaps what's most important is that pediatricians advise against too much screen time for our children. Children under 1.5 years should avoid screen time, with the possible exception of video chatting with friends and relatives, Skyping and FaceTiming, things of that nature. Beyond 1.5 years, only 1 hour per day is recommended, with a particular emphasis on quality and parents watching what the child is playing or watching on screen. As children grow older, the acceptable amount of time increases. However, there is a concern that this amount of time does not interfere with things like physical exercise, sleep, meals, family time, or other opportunities for social interaction, and for actually exercising our muscles and running and playing and being creative and doing things that are not found on screens or on phones. There's much information available to us with just a few keystrokes. However, we should still be mindful of how much time we're spending in front of our screens. Take some time to evaluate your screen time with your family. They might give you a little more objective idea of how much time you are spending in front of your screen. And try to set reasonable boundaries around the time you spend in front of a screen. Show your family how you're limiting your screen time through your own example. Are you spending as much time being active as you are in front of some kind of a screen? Are you spending as much time being active as you are with your iPhone, your laptop, your iPad, your TV? Do you have TVs, cell phones, iPads in your bedroom? Are you texting during meals? Make sure that you're not spending time interacting with a screen as opposed to interacting with your family. Be mindful that your activity is also not being tracked by marketers. Oftentimes, marketers are tracing the kind of searches you're doing and the kind of information you're seeking online, and they're using that information to stimulate your consumption by running ads and zeroing them in on your work. You know, we call that phishing, P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G. So be careful that that isn't happening to you. And also, are you responding to those advertisements? It's one thing to have those advertisements be focused on you. It's another to find out if you're particularly susceptible to them. So also be aware of how much time you're physically spending in front of the screen. So the next, we're going to talk a little bit about ways to sit less and move more. Be aware of how much time you spend sitting in front of a screen. For some professions, that might mean 8 hours or more. You might be in a job where you are sitting in front of a computer all the time. Try standing while you're on the phone, or take a look and see if you can find a standing desk somewhere and use it. Put your laptop on that at work or your desktop. Maybe set your phone for every hour and get up and walk 5 minutes every hour just to get up and have something different to do and to use some muscles. Also, think about some of the different physical activities that you can do just sitting in your chair. You know, can you do ab clenches or other kinds of activities while you're just sitting in your chair? Try walking meetings also. On the Wespath website, under the Center for Health, you can find 6 exercises that you can do at your desk to help you and to make the time that you spend sitting in front of a computer at your desk more useful. So we suggest that you go to the Wespath website and take a look at the Center of Health webpage. So what other comments and ideas do you have about limiting your screen time or about being more active in a world where screens take up so much of your time? What kind of thoughts can you share with us? You can go ahead and use the comment box in order to write those in. Remember, press the orange button and then go to the questions and press that button. Any thoughts, any questions, ideas? Well, here are a few.
Okay, one of our suggestions is using the stairs rather than the elevator. That's helped me. Also, parking in the furthest parking spot and walking in. That's one of my favorites because when it saves you from the people who don't put their grocery carts away and they ding your car. So that's like if you want to save the car from dings and runaway carts, just park in the farthest spot. Not only is it good for your health, but it saves you costs too. Another good one, schedule on the calendar breaks so that you have time for a walk, stretching, or giving your eyes a break from the screen. Another great one.
Taking 5 minutes to check email and respond to messages. Right. 25-minute blocks where I focus on reading and other work, doing something different besides looking at a screen. Yeah, if you can be flexible that way in your work, that's really a great way to keep yourself away from a screen and taking a good block of time. So you can also see managing your time at work if you have that flexibility. A Fitbit and also Virgin Health Miles incentives. Yay, that's one of my favorite things too. I totally enjoyed that. I just had a whole bunch of Virgin Health Miles incentives that I was able to cash in, so that was a great trip. So I enjoyed that. That was a great treat for me. What else?
You take a break for quiet time, a spot to relax without your device. And then another suggestion can be that if you are watching TV, to take those commercial breaks when you may not be, if you are watching live TV, I understand that a lot of people DVR stuff, but if there's a commercial break, that may be the perfect time to be physically active. So use that time to maybe at one time it's doing your sit-ups, another time doing wall push-ups, another time marching in place, and that can help shake up some of that time, sitting time as well.
Those are some great suggestions. So we want to give you some resources also that you can use. So here are a list of resources that you can go to that are online that will increase your screen time, but don't worry about that. These are great ways in order for you to decrease your screen time as well. So using it to help you to create better ways of balancing your screen time. So here are 5 different websites we hope you'll go to. And many of them you're probably familiar with already, but if you're not, we hope that you'll go there and take a look and use some of these resources in order to balance that in a more constructive way.
And then what we can do is that we have your email addresses, so we'll send you the link and respond, and then you'll have the PowerPoint presentation, and then you'll have those resources available.
See, we have some more ideas here, or I like the one about hula hooping while watching TV. That's a great idea.
I don't know, that person has more skill than I do. I'm not a good hula hooper.
That's great. I think I need to work on that. Okay, are there any other questions? And again, you can use that questions box down on the lower right-hand screen. If not, then we want to let you know that we have 2 more webinars involved in this series. One is pastoral visits. Are you carrying more than comfort? So you'll want to be able to tune in with us on Tuesday, October 17th, and find out what might also be entering into those pastoral visits. We're talking a lot about germs that we might be carrying, and so we might want to think a little bit about how our pastoral visits are more than what we think they are sometimes. And then the last one will be understanding anxiety and depression, and that will be on Thursday, November 9th. So please mark your calendars and join us at 2 o'clock on those 2 dates, and we would love to have you come and participate again. Thank you so much for being here today. So on behalf of Leah Holzwarth and myself, Leigh Goodrich, we wish you a wonderful weekend, and thank you so much for tuning in.